This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Beneroff, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. White Plains Week, what's happening, or the newsmakers, what's in store for the future. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world. John Bailey, the old Citizen-Net reporter here, in our 20th year of doing White Plains Week. And right now, here are the headlines. Monday, 2 new members of the Common Council and re-elected councilperson Nadine Hunt Robinson were sworn in by Mayor Tom Roach, ushering in a new era, maybe, on the Common Council. Governor Andrew Cuomo announces the start of a one-year construction of a new Penn Station, ushering in a new era, maybe, on New York City rapid transit. Con Edison says your delivery charge for electricity using Con Edison lines and systems will go up $5 a month, $60 a year. That's for electricity delivery. And there will be fluctuations in the high-use months depending on your usage. Natural gas users, your rates will go up 14.5%. We will show you. The Con Ed moratorium on natural gas will last until 2023. Con Ed confirms to WPCNR. The green energy rate for White Plains Westchester Power users stays virtually the same for the cost of electricity generated by sun, wind, and water power. Green power consortiums such as Westchester Power are expected to grow to 215,000 customers statewide in 2020, Westchester Power reports. Doral Arrowwood over in Rye Brook closes because it cannot refinance. Wegmans announces it will open June the 7th in Harrison. Governor Cuomo, in his State of the State address, will seek to cut Medicaid further and make Westchester County pay more of its share of the costs of Medicaid, which will threaten the county with a huge deficit if the governor is successful in cutting a deal with more money from the county. He will seek to ban vaping products and fentanyl products, and quite a lot of his address are on my website, is on my website. Ed Kooky Burns of 77 Sunset Strip and in Greece in 1978 passes away. Lend Me a Tenor presents Laughter Nonstop at Westchester Broadway Theater, and the holiday season fades away, sadly. And now let's go to the White Plains Week video newsreel March of Time for January the 10th, 2020. Now, that, of course, is the Nadine Hunt Robinson being sworn in for her next term on the Common Council, and she was also sworn in to be council president after the council voted for her for that position. Next, we had Jen Puja being sworn in by the mayor for her first term on the Common Council. And then we had Victoria Presser being sworn in. And they had things to say about what it meant to them. First, we'll hear from Jen.
Thank you. A wise person knows that there is something to be learned from everyone. I can honestly say that the people sitting in this room and standing are people I've learned a great deal from. I've learned that, most of all, it takes a village. In our case, it takes a city. It takes a city to make change. It takes a city to make a difference. It takes a city to energize and to mobilize and to brainstorm. It takes a city to educate, to empower, and to embrace one another. And it takes a city to lead. I'm truly grateful and humbled for the vote of confidence in this race. I'm so excited at the opportunity to serve all of White Plains. And as I have been told that, if not the youngest, I'm one of the youngest women ever elected to the White Plains Common Council. And that makes me think of my daughter, my nieces, my daughter's classmates, my friends' daughters. And if I can inspire just one little girl to dream a bigger dream and to run a race at a time that she knows is right in her life, then that'll be just as gratifying as it is to serve our city and the residents of our city for the next 4 years.
And next, we heard from Victoria Presser.
It is a great honor to be called upon to serve in government. I am grateful to the citizens of White Plains for giving me this opportunity. I dedicate my service to the memory of Pauline Oliver, the last Battle Hill resident to serve on the Common Council, a woman of valor, intelligence, and unwavering integrity. This is my pledge to her memory, to all of you, and to the memory of my immigrant grandparents who embraced this golden land. My pledge to give this work everything I've got. I love White Plains, and I'm thrilled and honored to have this opportunity to help make it even better. There's a lot of work to do, and if there's one thing we know, it's that complex challenges rarely have easy answers. But we will see the way through with thoughtful deliberation and a determination to find consensus and with love for our beautiful city. Thank you.
And then Nadine Hunt Robinson, who was, after she was sworn in as council president, had this to say.
It takes a village. And I look and I see my village on how I got here today. And I want to thank my family, my husband, the recorder, Molly, my extended family, my church members are here from First Community Baptist Church. My sorority members are here. Good to see you. Some Link sisters are here. Good to see you. The guardians are here. And so many of our extended family, I want to thank you. Because with your support and your lifting me, I became the first African-American woman to sit on the Common Council for the City of White Plains. And I became part of another first that neither of my humble colleagues mentioned, to be the first all-woman slate for the City of White Plains. And I am humbled in the faith that my colleagues have put in me, the citizens of the City of White Plains have put in me, to continue to serve the people and to be the council president and to work with my colleagues and the mayor to keep White Plains moving in the right direction. Thank you.
And congratulations to all three, the persons sworn in, and we wish them good luck, a ability to pay close attention, and not be afraid to ask questions of developers developing, because they need to be questioned a lot. Just a tip from my personal experience. Now, Governor Andrew Cuomo had a great week. He took to the airwaves on Monday from Madison Square Garden, and he talked about an incredible new construction project that was beginning, that is just beginning, and that was the new Penn Station. Let's look at this beauty. That is going to be constructed behind the facade of the James Farley Post Office building, which looks very similar to the old Penn Station many years ago, which I remember vividly. It is highlighted by a huge concourse of a skylit roof. Here's another shot of it next up, and that's the way it is going to look. There's a cross section of the rendering, and down below you can see the tracks of Amtrak and New Jersey Transit, and which are located below a very spacious concourse. And here is another view, and that is what it looks like looking down from one of the balconies, which will have all sorts of eateries and pleasantries, and the spaciousness of it is what Mr. Cuomo said. And here's what he said about this project.
Key to our development is going to be a regional mass transit system. That is how we are going to grow. You look at this metropolis, you can't get any more people in, you can't get any more cars in, you can't put any more roads in. You need a mass transit system that connects well, and connects efficiently if we're going to continue to grow. People have to be able to come in from the south, from the north, from Long Island, and it has to happen in real time. Today we're talking about Penn Station, which was a beautiful architectural icon, one of the great railroad stations that evidenced an Italian design. Not that I'm partial, but that's just a fact. But in 1963, the economics changed and it was demolished. Amtrak owns Penn Station. Long Island Railroad leases part of Penn Station. And Penn Station, everybody would agree, is not fit for the greatest city in the nation. Great historian summed it up: one entered the city like a god through the old Penn Station. Now one scuttles in like a rat. Fortunately, right across the street is another architectural marvel, which is the James Farley Post Office. You look at that frontage, you look at those columns, it is as magnificent from an architectural point of view as anything we have. The idea was discussed for decades. Well, why don't we turn that into a train station and use that facility, which is powerful as a train station? They talked about it for years. They did press releases, but nothing happened. But now something is happening, and something is happening fast. First, structurally, functionally, it makes sense. We are in Madison Square Garden. Underneath where we are now sitting are train tracks. The train tracks run across the street to the west and run under the Farley Post Office building. So that hall is also above the train tracks that we are above today, sitting where we're sitting. On the north side of the concourse is what's called the Long Island Railroad Concourse, which is leased from Amtrak. That concourse runs from the front of Penn all the way through Penn and all the way through the New Moynihan train hall. We're going to expand the Long Island Railroad concourse, expanding the width from 30 feet to 60 feet and raising the height from 7 feet to 18 feet. The concourses in Penn, I liken them to the catacombs. You can feel claustrophobic when you're down there, especially when it's crowded. Doubling the width, more than doubling the height, so you open up the concourse itself. It'll have a view of the tracks and the platforms below. It'll have a first-class retail mezzanine, first-class restaurants. It's going to be a world-class train facility. It's going to have significant entrance and access all around Penn, which is important for commuters on their way. It's also important from a security point of view. This is a new world when it comes to homeland security. And places of concentration, places of density, airports, train stations, you want to make sure you can get in and you can get out quickly. God forbid there's a threat. And the density in Penn Station, we need to have more access for people to get in and people to get out. We have that on Moynihan Station, and today we are announcing that we're going to add a new East End gateway to the planned development, which will be on the corner of 7th Avenue and 33rd Street. So you can come in that entrance, you can avoid coming into the front of Penn, there'll be less traffic, you can come down that East End gateway, you have access to the Long Island Railroad, you also...
And this is a great explanation by Governor Cuomo, and you can see the entire presentation. It runs exactly 28 minutes on People to Be Heard, which is on the wpcommunitymedia.org website as we speak. And the governor gives a great pep talk on how New York gets things done, and he's inspiring, and he is just indefatigable. He has great speeches, you can understand them, and just terrific. Now, we broke a story last week about Con Ed's price increase on the delivery charge. Next slide, please. And this is what it is going to be. This is from their filing with the PSC, Public Service Commission, and what they are changing is in 2020, for the electric rate, the rate change is $113, and the rate base, $21.660 million. Capital expenditure, $21.35 million. The rate change was about $84, and what this means, basically, is it's $5 a month if you pay for the electricity. And to my way of thinking, that goes up to about $60 a year. But when you use a lot more electricity with Con Ed on the kilowattage, it'll be more than that. Because when you have the energy rate, which is the energy conscious rate, the green rate, it's steady. It does not go up. Now, but the delivery charge does. The delivery charge is now almost 3 times what you pay for the actual electricity juice you're getting. It seems to me there's something wrong with that. It's like you're buying the razor to put the blades in, and it works quite nicely. Now, on the next slide, you will see how the various costs play into the raise increase. This is millions of bucks here, and what it deals with is the things like the infrastructure repair, etc., etc. Now, I asked Con Edison, well, what capital expenditures are you repairing? What needs to be done? And so far, they have not gotten back to me. And that's not surprising, but it does take time for them to answer questions. Now, I showed this proposal to a person highly knowledgeable about delivery rates and electric pricing, and he said that since financing is added to this, is the return on equity. And basically, the private investors in Con Ed get a negotiated return on their investment. That's the nature of things for investor-owned utilities. He said that the anticipated tax savings from the National Tax Act are netted out of the total calculation to the benefit of the ratepayers. He said reduced revenues, which are indicated as a reason why they need the delivery charge increase. I guess there could have been a net reduction in usage. So that was the case when the economy slowed. Maybe one other explanation might be that, quote, direct costs netted out from sales have gone up. He says if you sell widgets and widget part costs go up, those direct costs, cost of sales, could be deducted to get net sales revenue distinct from operating costs noted separately. Now, it's a little complex, but it seems to me that this is really to Con Ed's advantage. That deferred credits and costs is mysterious, my source says. Maybe they are trying to recoup costs that were not captured in some earlier filing. Depreciation costs would go up because of investments in depreciable assets made in the previous period. Sounds like something pretty much baked into things already. And then there are the corporate income taxes. I guess since this is oriented, he says, towards the SEC and the return on equity is post-tax, then you include the tax impact. It's a whole complicated cost justification that is found in tariff documents on the PSC docket. But he says he would like to know more himself, as would we. How about telling us exactly what we're going to do to improve the capital and charge us a lot more for delivery costs? Gas customers, you don't even want to know how much yours is going up. Now, let's get to the state of the state. It was a very long speech, 1 hour and 37 minutes, but Mr. Cuomo had one very key statement on Medicaid, which I thought was the most important part of his speech for Westchester County. Here it is.
We now face federal cuts, and we must correct for cost increases incurred when local governments were held harmless by the state for Medicaid increases. Remember what we did. 6 years ago, we froze the cost of Medicaid to local governments, who helped those local governments meet their property tax cap. For 6 years, we have been paying all the increased costs in local Medicaid spending and holding the local governments harmless. This year alone, we will spend $4 billion in covering the increase in the local government share. We're paying $177 million on behalf of Erie, $175 million on behalf of Westchester, $2 billion on behalf of the city of New York to cover their local costs. Also, the local governments still administer the program, even though they no longer share the costs. And we have seen dramatically higher cost increases recently. Why? You can't separate administration from accountability. It is too easy to write a check when you don't sign it. Just ask my daughters who are here today. The situation is I'm going to pay for that later. That was a joke. It was a joke. Joke. The situation is unsustainable. We have restructured Medicaid before with our MRT program, and we're going to have to do it again this year, and we will, and we can. The MRT program actually made Medicaid better than ever before, and we will do that once again this year.
A lot of tepid applause after that statement, wouldn't you say? And this is a huge issue, because for the county to pay more of its share of Medicaid means they have to finance it. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen? You are probably going to finance that extra pay that the governor wants from the counties. But also, the persons receiving the services may have their services cut, which is another huge issue. So that is something to watch for. It's something the county and the state have to work out. And so the taxpayers aren't absolutely bushwhacked on this. Now, last week we did the end of the year story, big stories of the year, and we did not include the fact that Liz Schallenberg died, a great feature and leader of the Democratic City Committee for many years. She died suddenly, unexpectedly, and we salute her service, her acumen, and one of the great names in White Plains leadership. And another death just yesterday, one of the icons of 1950s television, Ed Kooky Burns, died at age 86, and he had a hit record besides that great television show in which he sang, and it was called Kooky Kooky, Lend Me Your Comb. But he was a very cool fellow, and we appreciate his contribution to our pop culture. And another sad thing happened this week. The Christmas trees were collected by White Plains Department of Public Works, and I'm reminded how when the Christmas tree is sadly collected and put into a garbage truck, I really hate seeing that, but I captured it because we should remember that the tree symbolizes the love and good feeling that brings families together, and for a few brief moments brings the world together. And we look forward to the next Christmas tree. It spreads a lot of joy. And finally, we had a great new show open up at Westchester Broadway Theater. It's Lend Me a Tenor. And it's basically Sunday in the 1930s in the old West End of London, and Noel Coward appears to be brightening up a nervous, war-weary London, bringing in the old reliable genre, the impossible farce. Westchester Theater, a stroke of timely inspiration, takes us deep into heart and optimism of a show business promoter with America's farce master, Ken Ludwig's Lend Me a Tenor, winner of 3 Tony Awards and 4 Drama Desk Awards when it took to Broadway in 1989, then came back in 2010. It's a great show. The leads are personable. The laughs really are nonstop. Doors slamming, people hearing knocks on the door, wondering who it is, trying to hide. And really, the second act is tremendously staged, and not a lot of songs in it. And it's not about opera. It's about a lot of fun. John Bailey saying good night for Chinda Beverly for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week, news and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.